Hi friends, welcome back to our Florida podcast. My name is May and I have my sister Kaylee here today to be our listener. Hopefully you were able to listen to our most recent episode, Kaylee, in which she talked about the history of St. Augustine. Today I'm sharing information about one of St. Augustine's smallest residents. And so this week will be all about the Anastasia Island Beach Mouse.
Right.
So, a brief overview of mice in Florida and kind of like their history. There is about 16 subspecies of old field mice. It's a little weird. It gets a little different when you're looking at scientific names and stuff. And I was like, I don't know anymore. This is weird. But there's about 16 subspecies, and they all originated from old field mouse.
Okay.
And so about 8 of those species are beach mice. So off of just the Atlantic coast, you have the Anastasia Island Beach Mouse, Pallid Beach Mouse, and the Southeastern Beach Mouse. Now, unfortunately, the Pallid Beach Mouse has been extinct, they believe, since around 1959 due to habitat loss. There have not been any more recent counts. They were able to get some counts after like a hurricane that came through. And so basically they're just kind of marked as extinct since then.
That's crazy because I feel like you always think like rodents are infallible.
Yeah, you really think that too, which I'll kind of talk about that a little bit later on, because I thought the same thing, and it's really not the case with like beach mice. So it's very interesting. And so basically there's, like I said, there's those 16 subspecies of the old field mouse, and then the Anastasia Island Beach is one of them. And so this specific beach mouse now only resides in Anastasia State Park. That's where they're most counted. Now, they could be off of just St. Augustine's beach and the dunes, but they are relatively hard to count for. But kind of what I was learning and researching here was just that, like, they don't believe that they're really there anymore. They mostly just reside in the park where they're protected. But prior to this, they used to expand its home all the way to St. Andrew.
Okay.
And so it used to be a lot longer, a lot wider, that they were in these sand dunes. Unfortunately, as of now, only Anastasia State Park is where they reside. So a little bit about them and kind of what they look like. So the Anastasia Island Beach Mouse can be identified as having a light tan colored back and a pure white underside. And so they'll have some white markings on their face, and typically their tail is white, but they will also have like an occasional, like a small tan stripe on them. These colors and markings make it easier for them to camouflage in the sand and remain hidden from their predators. And I did learn that, which it makes sense. I did also still find it interesting that they're not just kind of like purely white, and like they still have so much tan on their backs. Like I feel like maybe they could do a little bit better if they were pure white, but because they do live in the sand dunes when there's also so much grass, I guess that's maybe why they would have that tan and they could kind of blend in with it.
Well, and
So
I
guess it
thinking,
probably kind of camouflages everything actually fully.
I'm thinking the
is my
way
guess.
shadows and stuff,
Yeah.
like captures like the shadows and dips and stuff. Whereas if it's pure white, it might like stand out a little bit more.
Yeah,
Exactly. I
exactly.
have the picture you sent me. They're really adorable, honestly.
They're so cute. They are unbelievably so cute. And plus, again, they blend in so well to be able to hide. And they're very shy, essentially. But it's pretty lucky if you do get to see one. They're very hard. There's kind of like, there's kind of a little bit less about them, less about their history, things like that. And you kind of really have to base it off the old field mouse. And because that's all there's really to be known about them.
Every time I say old field mouse, I just picture like old school nursery tale rhymes and stuff.
I do too. Every time. And then like I feel like I think about the nursery rhyme so much. I'm like, am I sure it's old field? Like, is it not called something else? Which then makes me send like into my own little spiral of being like, am I wrong here? But yeah, I do the same
like
thing
we got
too.
like town mouse, country mouse, and now beach mouse.
Yes.
We're talking about beach mouse today.
And the city mouse, and then yeah, I go down the whole little. I'm glad I'm not the only one. This is how, for any listeners right now, this is how you know that we're siblings. Yeah, we think the same.
You're either totally on board
here.
or like you guys are crazy. Moving on, please.
Yeah. So for anyone that hasn't seen a beach mouse, they are very, very small. They usually range from around like 5.5 inches, about 14 centimeters in length or so. I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh, it's a rodent. I still don't like it. It's gross. I'm sorry. Kelly, if you already looked at the pictures, but like, They are so cute. They're very, very tiny. They have the cutest little face, and their ears are like little round ears, and they're just incredibly cute. They're adorable.
It's a
and
little
no one's gonna
mouse.
convince
It's
me.
not a rat. They're
No,
very
it's
cute.
not brown. It's not dark. It's not like, okay, it's like when I hear people be like, oh, I was in New York and I sold a rat carrying a pizza slice that was bigger than it. And like, no, it's not that. Super tiny, just gonna fit in your hand, but they're adorable, and no one's gonna convince me otherwise. I won't even listen to it. So I will share some pictures of them in the post on our Instagram post, so you can always take a look there. And then as well, just Google the Anastasia Island Beach Mouse. Super cute. Kind of know we know what they are, kind of what they were looking for, and kind of what they have come from. We're gonna share a little about kind of what they eat, the habitat reproduction. What they eat, their habitat, reproduction, and the threats they face. Anastasia Island beach mice typically live in the wild for about 9 months to 1 year. So very, very short lifetime for them. They live in the dunes where they can burrow under the dune vegetation, and they eat a diet of insects, seeds, and fruit. Sand dune vegetation includes sea oats and dune.
Spell it?
Panicum.
Panicum.
Panicum. See, every time I say it, it's fine. But when I think about it, I'm like, I don't know. I think I need to do like, I think every time I say it, I think penicillin.
No.
For some reason. I don't like that's not it.
No, we're talking
every time.
Panicum at the disco.
Yeah, wow.
We should edit that out. Moving on.
No, more clip on that one. So that's what they mostly eat. Something that I found pretty interesting, and honestly, I shared this with Kaylee before we even started recording because we were kind of working at this at the same time. And I was like, dude, did you know that beach mice are monogamous? And she was like, no, they're not. And I was like, they only mate with one partner, which it's so strange, but I guess they also have such a short lifespan that maybe kind of makes sense.
They don't have time to get around.
That's horrible. But basically, beach mice are monogamous, and they will only mate with one partner for life. They have a gestation period of about 23 days, where the female will typically give birth to about 4 per litter. Now, I also felt like this was I say this as a fun fact, and I don't know how much about the fun part, but I just think it's kind of a crazy fact and something that's very interesting. Female mice can breed again after 24 hours after giving birth.
Okay.
It's just so crazy. So I don't think it's very typical. But it's basically like, given that they have the right food, the resources, they are safe in their little burrows, they're happy, it is a possibility that they could, which is still just crazy. Going to get, yeah, it's crazy.
So how many litters do they have, like, per life? Do they just keep going back to back?
No, they don't, which is why I'm assuming why it's very, very dependent on, like food. Everything for them is very dependent on food. So something with beach mice is that they will not go, they're not going to go into, like, okay, so typically you've got all your beach houses that are right off of the beach, and then you've got like your sand dunes and then the beach. So they're not going to go out of those sand dunes to go to the beach for anything, and they're not going to go out of the sand dunes to go towards people's homes. They only rely on sand dunes and the vegetation that they provide and the seeds and everything.
Gotcha. So they're not getting into your trash. They're not getting into, your campsite.
No,
they're eating their sea oats, and
that's all they're doing.
Yeah.
That's what they want to do. Now I'm sure there's times where they do go to campsites and different things and whatnot, but it's not like they're not smart enough. It's just kind of like they don't want to. They want kind of no part of it.
Yeah, they've got their specific territory. Also, they're light, so like they're perfectly camouflaged against. I mean, sorry. Couple thoughts here. They're tiny. They have no defenses, so their camouflage is what they have. They're camouflaged specifically to be in sand and like among the grass. And once you cross a paved road or you cross into dark green grass or something, they're going to stick out so much. Like, they're just this little white spot.
As soon as they remove themselves from that, they at that time are just...
Yeah, I don't think it's a matter of intelligence or like motivation or something like that.
No.
They're not picking themselves up by their bootstraps to go get food. I don't think it's that. I think they're just
they are not a New York City rat.
They're not a New York City rat.
It makes sense that they're so classified as rodents and stuff, but at the same time, I'm also just like, yes, you guys are classified as rodents, but like, you guys don't have that same logic and thought process that most people assume rodents have.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
like, why would they? So
Well, and I think it's probably a lot of personification to think that there's like logic going into it. Like it's all instinct and like what they're
Literally.
internalized for, and they are built to hide well in the dunes, so they need the dunes.
They do. Very interesting. I'm gonna go, let's see. So, kind of going back a little bit, just back to the reproductive and how many litters and things like that. So, baby mice, or technically they're called pups, are weaned around 18 days after being born, and then they will reach sexual maturity around 30 days of age. So, typically
Wow.
about a month or so. It's relatively pretty quick, which kind of makes sense with, again, their short lifespan. Now, females can, this goes back to your question, so females can give birth up to 2 litters per year, but that
Okay.
really strongly depends on if they have the right food resources and their habitat.
Wow. So they're not producing at like the rates that we think about like rabbits and rodents and stuff. They're
No,
having
not at
4
all.
babies once or maybe at best twice. So
Yeah,
they're having 8 little guys, and they have to be pretty tiny when they're born. So I'm sure survival's
so
like,
tiny.
eh.
Not the greatest.
Yeah. Okay.
I usually do get the mortality rates and like things like that. Did not get them for this episode, but it's very minimal. There's only 4, and even though they can reproduce quite a bit, really strongly depends on what's surrounding them. What do they have? And so something to kind of think about is that, so typically they breed in the wintertime. That's typically when they'll breed. That's kind of breeding season for them. But they will breed all year round, given that, again, food and the habitat is there for them. Now, something to think about for Florida is that we have hurricane season through, I mean, technically it's like what? It's from August,
June through
June,
November.
June through November. Okay. So we have June through November. And then November, you have a little bit of period of time. And then we hit into our, Florida winter, so be it. But basically, that really depends on how much they're reproducing in that time frame based on how bad the hurricanes were and what hurricanes came through, or not even just hurricanes, but tropical storms came through and affected their habitat, and how much are they rebuilding? Were their burrows destroyed? Were they wiped out because of those storms and things? So
They
that's
are
something to kind of
family
think about.
planning. If there's no house to put the babies in, we're not having the babies.
Exactly. So it's like, what do we kind of expect them to do? And it makes sense. So
Oh. Yeah.
yeah,
You can't have babies if you're stressed about food. I mean, you
what are you
can't
gonna
even
do?
like if you're malnourished, like trying to grow the babies is going to kill you. So, yeah.
Yeah, and they're already so little, so it's like how much. It's not like you're so little, so you also only need so much. So like, how hard is it to get the so little that you need to even be able to do the bare minimum, I guess.
Man. Yeah, when you put it like that.
Yeah, I thought about that too last night. I was like, oh, that's a shame. Now, kind of like I said before, exactly like I said before, beach mice are nocturnal. So during the day, they are sleeping in their burrows made in the sand dunes. The beach mouse can be described as a shy. They want to keep to themselves mostly. Really, they just want to sleep during the day. They're trying to stay down. They stay cool in the sand. They just want to stay happy in the sand, and that's where they want to be. Now, as cute as these beach, it's a lot of, they're very cute and they're adorable, and I think almost everyone should think they're super cute and love them. But kind of like I already talked about, they face lots of threats. And so they are currently facing extinction, and they honestly have been facing extinction for a while now. So it's kind of great that they have held on, but also at the same time, currently, it's very hard to try to keep them. There have been lots of, I'll share some links. There's a couple reports that you can go through and read about restoration that's trying to be done and what's continued to be done. But again, it's just kind of hard given the fact that Florida is Florida, honestly. And so their biggest threats that they are continuing to face, and that's going to be for their habitat loss. And so that's going to be hurricanes, not even just hurricanes, but major tropical storms are going to come through. And then, of course, just rising sea levels are 3 big issues that they are facing just from natural causes.
Yeah, they're
This
just
doesn't include anything else so
can
far.
get flooded out like in any of those
Yeah,
things.
they're gonna get flooded out. They can't survive at all. Like I said before, they only want to stay in their sand dunes. Like that is where they are going to be. That's where they're happy. That's where they're staying. And so natural causes are really just taking them out seasonally, honestly.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's problematic, but
It's also probably a big factor in like why there only happen 1 or 2 litters, like the amount of time that you have before you're in the rainy season. and you're dealing with all of that is like pretty minimum.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about the timeline of it too, so let's say typically the breeding season is in the winter time. So in the winter time, they're breeding. It takes about 30 days for the babies, the pups to reach sexual maturity. So then at that point, they could reproduce. But they're only breeding if after a hurricane and our tropical weather that came through didn't affect their homes and their habitat.
Mm-hmm.
So given that they had a good year and then they are able to reproduce in the winter time, takes them about a month or so. And then after that point, if they have their habitat still and all those things, then at that point, great. But their life expectancy is only 9 months to a year.
Yeah.
So it's not even like they're technically not, I guess timeline wise, like there's probably not many like there's not an insane amount after hurricane season. And then you go into trying to reproduce and there's probably not many. So you're not really
Yeah, you
gaining and
could lose
adding
like
too
full
many.
generations pretty easily.
Yeah. So I think that's something to kind of really think about too when you're thinking about their lifespan and like the actual timeline of where this all falls into place. So those are the natural causes that continue to be issues for the mice. Now, on a daily, they face threats from constant foot traffic and predators, development from homes and businesses. Some of its predators, animal predators, include outdoor cats. Actually, outdoor cats is like one of the only, like, not only, but like one of the biggest ones listed. It's just like outdoor cats, raccoons, and coyotes seem to be like their biggest issues. And then, of course, birds. And that's kind of circle of life of birds, that's just kind of how it works. But outdoor cat is very interesting. When I was looking up some information and kind of the restoration, there was, I forget this was beach rentals, but they had posted about how they were like, hey, we're doing restoration on the beaches. This doesn't affect your stay, whatever, but we're doing our beach rentals and stuff. And so one of their rules and regulations that they were going to have moving forward is that like any indoor cats could not be outside, and that like they were not allowing any outdoor cats. If they were spotted, they were going to be kind of removed from the area, either put in, the, not homes, but oh my
Like
gosh.
SPCA sort of deal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was like, not homes. That's not it. But I mean, eventually that's the goal and stuff. But they're big enough of a problem that there's rules and different things for rentals and things that are going to
It
be
makes
right there,
sense.
which
You're
is pretty,
introducing a new predator that is
yeah,
not native, that isn't
it's not
supposed to be
native
there,
at
that is
all.
not would not be on the beach. So yeah.
Yeah. Which I found pretty interesting. I was like, okay, I don't love, the rental homes and stuff on the beach, but I do appreciate the fact that, like, let's do a little bit of something. Now, if you are a Florida local, or if you are visiting San Augustine Beach or Anastasia State Park, you will see several signs about the sand dunes posted as do not walk on the sand dunes, do not walk through them, and do not allow your pets to walk through them. Now, normally there are either already walk-through designated pathways, or there are going to actually be, you should mostly see designated boardwalks that we should be using in replacement to prevent us from walking through those sand dunes.
And side note, you want to use those because otherwise you're gonna get like sand spurs and stuff in your feet, and
Lots of sand spurs.
it's so bad.
It
So
hurt.
yeah, use the boardwalks. They're there for a reason. Like a lot of money and time was invested to make it safer for you to walk through and also for the sand dunes. Because the thing is, like, if you look at how shifty sand is, the second you start walking over those grasses, they're just gonna get uprooted. And once they're gone, like that's the food source for the mice and for so many, there's so many birds that call that area home and all that. So anyways.
Exactly. So there's literally so many different species. There's birds, there's reptiles, are the rodents, mice, so many different things, grass, flowers. There's a lot of native species that rely on these sand dunes. And so us walking through them causes a lot of issues. But specifically, the beach mice and sand dunes help each other out and they also help us out. They help the existing homes that are already there and they also help any existing business. And so basically, if you've ever been to the beach and you've seen sand dunes and you've seen that there's that grass, there's going to be a really, really tall grass. And I shared some pictures with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see like this long, stringy grass, which is going to be the grass that you see growing in there. And then you also see something that's called sea oats. Both of these things are something that feed the mice. And then as well, this grass will go ahead and grow in the sand dunes and basically kind of puts in a structure to the sand. Because like we said, when you walk on sand, it kind of spreads out everywhere or it sinks down. And so there's nothing really keeping sand in place. And these grass, the sea oats, all these things are what actually keeps sand in place. And so why it's also helping us is because if this grass is in place, it's going to help prevent erosion when we do have our hurricane season and when we do get our tropical storms and even the water that's the seawater that's rising right now that we're having issues with. These are all things that help, obviously, the mice, obviously help our beaches, and help also the homes. Because if we have these built up sand dunes and something that's blocking, that's helping prevent the water from coming all the way up, any existing houses, hopefully, ideally, wouldn't be taken, they won't be washed out, which long term is also a great thing that they're not being washed out because it's less debris that's being washed out into our ocean again. And it's a lot better. We also don't have to come back through and rebuild. And so it's a huge cycle. And I feel like we could go on for forever on this. It's just a huge cycle where we need this one thing and well, really two things to be able to have all these other things and to also just save a lot of time, resources.
Well, and more we're seeing that erosion become a problem. Like every year, I feel like I've seen it off of California. I think I've seen it off the beach of North Carolina. I'm sure it's happening in Florida too, where there's these multi-million-dollar homes just being washed into the ocean because like we took out the dunes, we took out the marshes, we took out the mangroves, we kept building and building and getting closer and closer and closer to the water. And natural erosion is taking place paired with like unnatural rising sea levels that are rising faster than expected. And so they're just washing out all that sand. And like if you don't have that root system holding that in, your house is going into the water. Your hotels are going into the water. So yeah, it is a very big deal. And it's kind of crazy to when you say like, oh, this mouse is helping us. But like the mouse is allowing for that root structure to exist and keeping it healthy. And it's such a symbiotic relationship. And all of that is just keeping that shore together. So yeah.
Perfectly well said. So exactly, it's really a full circle. And it's really helping a little bit of everyone out that if we can have this grass growing, we keep the beach, one of their main diet is going to be this grass and then the sea oats. And so part of what they help do is when they're eating those sea oats, they are naturally basically dropping seeds. And so that's going to hopefully plant more of that grass. So they are also eating the resource, but also helping keep that resource up. And one of the main, basically, I'll share some documents on it and some links and stuff. But one of the main resources and restoration that's done is replanting the grass. So they go through, they block off the sand dunes, and they start trying to plant the grass and the sea oats. And so this provides more for the mice, but realistically, if we had a better population of mice and that they were continually growing the grass, then that would also help the fact that we can get the sand dunes built back up and that it can help prevent the erosion, which again, kind of like I said, it goes back to help us. So without us having to put money into it, naturally mice are eating the sea oats, spreading those seeds, they disperse, and then some more of that grass is able to grow, etc. And so I think I've said it like 3 times now, it's literally a full circle. It's very, very important.
It's kind of crazy too to think that restoration can be as simple as like planting more of those seeds so that you've got more sea oats, the mice are more well fed, and they're going to just keep spreading it. So once again, like these systems can either, like they're symbiotic, so they can either make things worse when things are going bad, or they can make things better when they're being used properly.
Exactly. And if we as people can stop making it worse, then we can just let nature do what it's actually intended to do and maintain the resources, which again, later on helps us. And so it's this great cycle. And so now, like I said, I'm going to share some resources specifically on what Anastasia State Park is doing to help the beach mice, but also just restore the sand dunes. And I'll share that. But there are a couple of things just that when we're going to the beach that we can do that will also help this a lot as well. And so I'm going to go ahead and share just some bullet points. So how can you protect the Anastasia Island Beach Mouse and the sand dunes? So you gotta kind of help both. And so basically I've talked about it before, but we're gonna stay off the sand dunes. We're gonna stick to the boardwalks and crossovers. There's lots of reasons to stick to them, so just go ahead and do it. We are not driving in the dunes. Yeah, we shouldn't be using poisons in or near dunes. Indoor cats need to be inside, and we should not be feeding stray cats. Because that's regardless of the fact that yes, we are feeding them, it's still bringing them to, and if you stop feeding them, then they're gonna have to find something else to feed on. And so because of the mice being nocturnal, they're gonna come out at night, which is a great time for cats to go ahead and feed on them.
It's like if you're right there on the beach, you're not feeding the cats because it's going to draw them in and then they're going to eat the mice. Like if there's not a good source of food, the mice aren't enough for them, so they're
Yeah,
going to go elsewhere. It seems kind of
exactly.
counterproductive because you're like, well, if I just feed them, then they won't be eating them, but that's not
It's
how
kind of
it's
more
happening.
so it's like, okay, well, when you stop, and then it's also how many did you attract in the process of you feeding those stray cats? So it's a hand in hand, essentially. We also want to only be planting native plants around residents' homes and or residential homes and businesses. And we also want to dispose of trash properly to keep predators away. So these are just things that that we can go ahead and do when we're visiting, when we're vacationing. If you're moving to St. Augustine in Florida, these are just things that, if we keep in mind, we can help out a lot, make sure that their habitat is going to go ahead and stay safe, meaning they can reproduce and, make it through the life cycle a lot easier. Now, if you are visiting St. Augustine and specifically Anastasia State Park, I know we've talked a little bit about the sand dunes, and there's honestly so much more to learn. I didn't go too far in depth, just kind of more so the role. But if you're at Anastasia State Park, they have a walking trail that you can walk through that is pet friendly. It's called the Ancient Dunes Trail. I have actually done this trail. It's a pretty leisure walkthrough. It's essentially old dunes that were initially formed by wind and wave action. And so when the ocean was farther inland, these were all built up. And so since then, everything's been washed out. It's a lot farther. I guess not really. I guess farther inland. I guess I'm not sure exactly actually how that kind of works, but basically they're old. There's a side, and if you ask anyone, you can go ahead and get some more information or just look it up as well. But you can walk the trailhead. It gets parts. A lot of it's kind of flat, but it's all grown up into basically like a Florida forest, I would say. So there's oak trees, lots of different native species that are
Palm
growing there.
scrub.
Palm scrub, yeah, very Florida. So it's a Florida forest. That's why I call it that. Nothing forest is really like it, but just Florida. Like I said, I've walked this trailhead. You guys through some points that you can actually go up and down a little bit, and I was like, oh, look at Florida with its elevation.
Yeah.
And it's just from the old sand dunes and stuff, but it is pretty cool. You can hear the ocean. It's kind of like you're stepping away from everything. I thought it was pretty cool. And so you can just kind of learn about it. But that's definitely something if you're in the park, don't want to just be at the beach. You also, if you have your pets, it's pet friendly again. So you can take your pets through this little trailhead and stuff. So it's pretty nice.
Nice.
But that is everything I'm going to share today about beach mice. Kaylee, if you want to go ahead and add anything, go for it.
I was just going to say, I think it's really important to just acknowledge how important the dunes are. It seems so crazy when you start talking about like this mouse and it needs this only specific thing and it only goes this far. And you're like, I mean, seems like it's not trying. But the thing is, like, that mouse was built so perfectly for its environment. And its environment was built so perfectly to protect the rest of that land and really hold the line, hold the shoreline, which benefits everybody. So I think it's great that there are all the things going on. Make sure you're using the boardwalks. But also, I think it's also really important to make sure and pay attention to what's going on. I know last year there was almost a land grab by the government to start developing some of these state parks. And there was talk of putting a hotel on Anastasia Island State Park. And thankfully, the community really came together and protested that, because that would have knocked out so many of those dunes and so much of that environment. I know the mouse was brought up, and also there's a jay that's native to the area that's endangered. And it's we already have such a limited environment or a limited space because it's already developed so much. So the wild spaces we do have need to be protected, because one little line of sea oats in front of a vacation rental isn't going to do it. We need to have these wild spaces. That's why it's important to have places like Anastasia State Park and the natural space, the 40 acres that I was talking about on Monday at the Fort Mose Historic State Park. All of those wild spaces matter so much because that is habitat. Yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us, for listening. Please like and subscribe and share wherever you listen. If you have any recommendations for an episode, whether it's a historical figure or event, a specific location you want to hear more about, a specific animal that you're curious about, you can email us at ourfloridapodcast@gmail.com. If you enjoyed listening or learned something today, please share. Send this to a friend, send them a text, an email. And please give us a 5-star review. Those reviews will help build our credibility and build our listenership so that when people are looking for their next podcast, they're like, yes, let's check this out. So please share. Please give us a review. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much. Bye.